eCapitol News Director Sean Ashley joins us to discuss the final chaotic week at the Capitol. Sean, on the last day of the session, the Senate approved the transportation bond issue, but that just wasn't easy at all, was it?
No, it wasn't, particularly in the Senate. There was some concern over the amount of the bond issue, and there was concern with some of the negotiations that took place to get to that bond issue. Throughout the course of the legislative session, legislative leaders in the Senate had indicated that they didn't want to bond more than $150 million. In the end, it ended up being $200 million and will fund road projects throughout the state. What happens in this process is that $200 million that would otherwise go to the Department of Transportation for those road projects will now go into the General Revenue Fund and will be appropriated to various state agency programs throughout the state as a way of balancing the budget. As I said, some had felt like they should have limited themselves to $150 million. Some felt like the House of Representatives had reneged on a number of different promises throughout the course of the negotiations that were made in order to get the Senate up from $150 to $200 million. In the end, that bill passed with a few votes to spare, so those bonds will be sold sometimes later this year, and those various agencies will be funded.
Elimination of a zero emissions tax credit was on the table this week. What happened?
That was in fact part of the negotiations related to the bond issue. The House had allegedly agreed to either reduce or eliminate the zero emissions tax credit on the wind industry. But in the end, when that was put before the House Joint Committee on Appropriations and Budget, that committee voted it down. As a result, at the same time, the House had already passed the $200 million bond issue, so the Senate was sort of stuck with that bond issue. There are a number of concerns and, for that matter, complaints about the zero emission tax credit for wind. A number of those companies are located out of state, and so many people see this as a tax credit that benefits out of state and even out of country corporations. There's also a concern that it is too generous. As the number of wind energy facilities in the state have grown, of course, so has the tax credit. More and more dollars are being paid out to those companies, and some would like to see it either curtailed or limited or eventually eliminated. There's very little doubt that that's a discussion that's going to come back again in the future. Of course, it was only a little more than a year ago that the legislature voted and Governor Mary Fallin signed a bill that took away the ad valorem exemption that the wind industry was receiving for their various facilities. So it's probably going to be another one of those big fights over tax credits that we continue to see next year and perhaps into the future.
eCapitol News Director Sean Ashley, thanks for being here.
You're very welcome.